Hi everyone, welcome back to our series called History of the English Literature. So far we have discussed about the different periods of English literature starting from Anglo-Saxon, followed by Anglo-Norman, Age of Chaucer, Age of Revival, Elizabethan Age, and now we have reached the sixth part. So far we have discussed about the different types of genres that were prominent during each period, the major historical events that shaped each of these periods, and in the last video we discussed about Elizabethan Age and we discussed about the prominence of drama, the other literary features, and also we discussed about the Tudor dynasty. So in this video, we will be dealing with two ages, that is the Jacobean and Caroline age. So while we were discussing about the Elizabethan age, I have mentioned that Queen Elizabeth, she was the last Tudor ruler of Britain and she was followed by James I, and that actually marked the beginning of the Stuart dynasty. So in this video, we will be dealing with the first two Stuart rulers, that is James I and Charles I. So together, the period Jacobean and Caroline age starts from 1603, then ends in 1649 with the execution of Charles I. So in this video, at first we will be dealing with Jacobean age. So Jacobean age is supposed to be, or Jacobean age is called by the name of James I, who ruled from 1603 to 1625. And speaking about this Jacobean age, as I said earlier, the name Jacobean came from James I because the Latin term, the Latin word for James I is Jacob. And the next thing that we have to know is who is James I? Since we know that Queen Elizabeth has got no legitimate heir, so the question is who is James I? And in order to understand who is this James I, we have to go back to Henry VII. That is the beginning of Tudor dynasty. So we know that Henry VII, he entered the War of Rose and he became the King of England, King of Britain, King of England, thereby starting this Tudor dynasty. And this Henry VII has got two children, that is Henry VIII, who we know as the father of Queen Elizabeth and also as the most controversial King of England for bringing supremacy over the church. So we have discussed it in the previous videos. So apart from Henry VIII, Henry VII also has a daughter and her name was Margaret Tudor. Okay, so James I has his lineage from Margaret Tudor. So this Margaret Tudor, she married the Prince of Scotland at that time, who was known as James IV of Scotland, and he has got two children, James V and Mary I. And this Mary I, she was executed by Queen Elizabeth, but after the death of Queen Elizabeth, since there was no direct heirs, the people started to, or the minstrels, the appointed figures, they started to look for the nearby relation, and that was the son of Mary I, that is, who was the ruler of Scotland during the time, who ruled Scotland as James VI. And that is how he came to England. He became the ruler of England and he was and he got this name James I of England. So James I of England is same as James VI of Scotland. So that is the hierarchy, or that is how James I came to the throne. And James, the Latin term for James is Jacob. That is how Jacobean age, that is how the term Jacobean age came. So this was marked by the reign of James I. Following Elizabeth I's death, James VI of Scotland, he became James I of England, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland under the Stuart dynasty, because at that time he was also the King of Scotland. So that was the very first time when England and Scotland, they together came under the Stuart dynasty. Then apart from James I, there were many religious conflicts that happened during this time, because towards the end of Elizabethan age, you can find the prominence of these Protestants, prominence of the Puritans, and the Catholics were slowly marginalized, or they were slowly, it was really hard for Catholics to live during that era. And James the First, even during the time of James the First, there was this tension between the Protestant and Catholics, and the gunpowder plot in 1605 was an attempt to assassinate James, and Parliament was a major Catholic conspiracy because they wanted a Catholic ruler, and James the First was not their preference, and therefore there was an attempt. We will discuss about this gunpowder treason later in this video. So that was one example of how there still existed the religious tension between the Protestant and Catholics, even though in Queen Elizabeth's period she tried to bring a moderacy, she tried to bring a religious tolerance between these two religions. And apart from this, we can also find colonial expansion, because Queen Elizabeth, she signed the contract of East India Company towards the end of her life, and that colonial expansion followed by the establishment of Jamestown in Virginia, that actually marked the beginning of English colonization in North America, and that was really a very achievement from the point of view of Britain, both economically and also in the point of view of this colonization. And also there were many scientific and philosophical advancement, and the prime example or the major example of such advancement can be seen through the works of Francis Bacon, who tried to bring a new method into the science, or new method into the study of science through his work. So there were many other writers who tried to have this scientific and political advancement. And another important thing that you have to remember, that it was during this Jacobean age, there was this court culture. That is, the Stuart court was known for its opulence and the love of masque, theoretical performance combining drama, music and elaborate costumes. So while discussing about these masque or literary features, we will come to this masque. And but before that, you have to understand that before during this Elizabethan age, when drama was prominent, or when drama was too much popular, Queen Elizabeth, if she wanted to watch a drama, she normally would come to any theatres where there were allocated seats for the royalty, the nobility, the aristocracy, for the common men. So that was normally a tendency. But during James the First time, there was this court culture where they started to prefer the masque. Masque means this luxurious masque, which could only be sponsored by this court culture. So that was also another feature that you can find here. Now, speaking about this historical background, as we discussed earlier, there was this gunpowder plot, which even is now celebrated, which has got its own cultural impact on British society even today. So the major reason behind this gunpowder plot was this religious tension between the Protestants and Catholics, because during the reign of James the First, Catholics, they faced persecution, even though he tried to bring a religious moderacy or religious tolerance like Queen Elizabeth. It was really difficult for him to continuously monitor his subjects. So there was a Catholics, they faced persecution and also heavy fines for practicing their faith. So at the beginning of his reign, he promised some leniency towards the Catholics, but these expectations were dashed, leading to frustration among the Catholic faction. So they were really frustrated with the rule of James the First, and the objective behind this gunpowder plot was to overthrow the Protestant government. They wanted to show the power of Catholics. They wanted to reconsider a Catholic ruler to the throne, and they wanted to eliminate King James the First and to install a Catholic monarch to restore Catholicism as England's dominant religion. And the major figures or the key conspirants associated with this gunpowder plot are Robert Catesby, Guy Fawkes, Thomas Percy, and each of them, Thomas Percy, Thomas Winter, John Wright, and each of them were allocated with their own different tasks. For example, Robert Catesby, he was mastermind behind the plot, and Guy Fawkes, he was tasked with igniting the explosives, because they couldn't start the explosives like when no one is around. They have to wait for a particular moment when James the First and his family comes to the parliament. So it was really a conspiracy. So Guy Fawkes was tasked with igniting these explosives. Then Thomas Percy, Thomas Winter, John Wright, they were the key associates who helped plan and gather the resources. and the explosion, it was scheduled for November 5th, 1605, the day which is now the day which is celebrated as a national festival even today, and the day of the state opening of Parliament, when King James I, his family and leading Protestant nobles would be present. So someone understood this plot, or someone betrayed them. There was an anonymous letter which was sent to Lord Monteagle warning him to avoid the opening of Parliament, and this letter was passed to the authorities, and the conspirators, they leased a cellar beneath the House of Lords and filled with 36 barrels of gunpowder, which should be ignited by Guy Fawkes, and acting on the letter, Sir Thomas Knivett and his men, they searched the area beneath the Parliament, and they discovered Guy Fawkes guarding the gunpowder barrels, because he was supposed to ignite it, and therefore he was guarding these barrels. And Fawkes was tortured until he revealed the name of his conspirators, and the plotters were arrested. They were tried for treason, and also they were executed by hanging, drawing and quartering in Jan 1606 itself. Okay, so that is what happened here. And the thing was that this gunpowder plot has got a very significant aftermath, especially when it comes to the case of Catholicism, because it actually arised an anti-Catholic sentiment. Because even though there were problems, they suffered persecution, still it was not right for them to kill their own king. And James I was actually a king who believed in this divine right of kingship. He believed that after the God, it was he who should be respected, who should be admired, and there is no one who has the rights to question me. So that was the divine right of kingship that James I believed. So this actually started as an anti-Catholic sentiment throughout. So the discovery of this plot, it deepened the mistrust of Catholics, and Catholics were more persecuted, and it led to many harsher laws against them, which ultimately led them to flee to other countries like America or other settlements, or what they call as the New World. And here you can also find that this is considered, that is November 5th is regarded to be a national traditional day, which is known as Guy Fawkes Night or bonfire night, celebrated with fireworks, bonfires, burning of Guy Fawkes photos. It's still celebrated in England. Now coming to, so these are the major historical things that you have to remember during this Jacobean age. And coming to the major literary features, so we know that there are three different genres that were prominent during this time. During that time, that was drama, poetry and prose. But here the thing is that when we speak about drama, Elizabethan age was the peak time of drama. It was considered to be the golden nest of English literature because of the contribution, because of the development of this genre called drama. And it actually followed during the time of Jacobean age. But what we can say is that the peak was during the time of Elizabethan age, which actually, which gradually decreased, or which actually, what can we say, it was more like a climax of that great era. For example, you can find William Shakespeare writing during this Jacobean age, and most of his famous works are there in that period, but still that is not what we call as the peak time of Shakespeare. Okay, so similarly we have this other dramatists like Ben Jonson, Beaumont and Fletcher. There are other writers who actually belong to this period, but there was a shift that you can find in drama when it comes to Elizabethan age to Jacobean age. And the first thing is that even though this revenge tragedy was prominent during the Elizabethan age, it actually turned to be more dark and complex during the Jacobean age. In Jacobean age, there were two major dramas that were popular during that time. That was, or we can say almost three. That was the revenge tragedy, Mask, and also the city comedies. Okay, so here in this darkness, apart from that, there were tragic comedies which followed the pattern of Elizabethan age, but these three were the most prominent dramatic genres during that time. So when it comes to revenge tragedy, you can find that the writers, they preferred more dark and complex themes, because the era has got its own uncertainties. There is no more peace like that of Elizabethan age. So there were the themes like corruption, morality, ambition, etc. The one of the major example is John Webster. John Webster's The Duchess of Malfi. In that work, you can find how much of corrupted society, even the clergy, it shows the corruption of this clergy. Then another thing that actually became prominent due to the court culture of the Jacobean age was the masque. So the court masque, combining spectacle and allegory, were a popular form of entertainment, and it was popularized and developed by the architect Inigo Jones and the writer Ben Jonson. Then we can also find the city comedies like Volpone, Alchemist in the works of Ben Jonson. So city comedies were also a popular trend during that time. Now coming to poetry, we can find that one of the major achievement in poetry of the Jacobean age was the translation of Iliad and Odyssey by George Chapman, because this was actually the beginning, or this was the first official work of translation that you can find into English verse. So this work is actually Joe Chapman's translation of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey into English verse, which actually inspired many writers in the future generation. And another type of poetry that you can find towards the end of this Jacobean age, and even through the writings of John Donne at the beginning of Jacobean age, was the metaphysical poetry. So the metaphysical poetry, even though the term metaphysical poetry, the term metaphysics was first used by Dryden, and these writers were combined together. These writers got this umbrella term of metaphysical poetry through Samuel Johnson. So speaking about metaphysical poetry, their writings, they were intellectual. So their writings was actually a blend of emotional and intellectual ingenuity, and it was characterized by conceits and wits, which was not that much familiar, which was not that much prominent during any of the previous times. So, metaphysical poetry was one important features that you can, or important types of writing or poetry that you can find during this during this Jacobean age. And one reason behind such a writing was what we earlier called as the scientific advancement. So, scientific advancement was one major thing that we could find as a beginning of, or as the motivation of this metaphysical poetry. So the term, it was coined by the critic Samuel Johnson to describe a loose group of 17th century English poets whose work was characterized by the inventive use of conceits and by a greater emphasis on the spoken rather than lyrical quality of their verse. And you have to remember some important metaphysical poets, you have to study them in detail. So all these poets are studied in detail in our LMS platform. So if you can either go there and study it, or just note down the writers and you note down these poets and you can have your self-study. So the important metaphysical poets are Abraham Cowley, John Donne, John Cleveland, George Herbert, Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell and Richard Crashaw. So metaphysical poetry was one distinct characteristic that you could find in this Jacobean age. And when it comes to essays, obviously it's Francis Bacon, because Queen Elizabeth, she was not that favorable towards Bacon. So it was after the death of Queen Elizabeth and at the beginning of the reign of James I that Bacon came into prominence, and he was a philosopher, essayist, and his works are all important. We have detailed video of Francis Bacon in our LMS section, so just have a look on that. So he was a philosopher and essayist known for essays and Novum Organum, and the year of publications of his essays are important, and then Novum Organum, or the new method that he produced. So we know that Francis Bacon, he laid the foundation of what we call as the empiricism. So it is the experience that matters. That was the study, or that was the method that was used by Bacon to bring an advancement in science. So he laid a foundation and was a powerful and persuasive advocate for modern objective inquiry, predicated upon empiricism as a lens to study the natural world. Okay, so these are the major literary figures or major literary features that we have to remember during this period. Now moving on to this Caroline age. So James I, he was followed by Charles I, his second son. So Caroline age is marked from 1625 to 1649, even though the Civil War actually began in 1642. So we close this Caroline age with the execution of Charles I. So now let's look at the historical background, major literary features and literary works during the time of Caroline age. So now let's look at the historical background of the Caroline age. So just like how we called, Jacobean age is given the name after the Latin term of James, that is Jacob. Similarly, the Latin term of Caroline is Carolus, and that's why the term Caroline age. Okay, so here it refers to the period in English and Scottish history named after the 24-year reign of Charles I. So the term is derived from Carolus, the Latin for Charles, and this era it was dominated by the religious, political and social discord between the Royalist party and the parliamentarian opposition. So there was a contrast, or there was a debate, or there was this tension, growing tension between the Royalist party, that is the party who supported Charles I, and the parliamentarian opposition who supported the role and the power of parliament. So there was constant growing conflicts and tension between them, and it reached its peak during the time of Charles I, and there were many reasons for this growth. The one thing was that Britain, it had an uneasy peace, growing more restless as a civil conflict between the king and the supporters of parliament worsened, because we know that a civil war is not something that will uprise overnight. Okay, it is something that gradually ignites and at some point it explodes. So this was also the case when it came to Charles I. So speaking about Charles I, he was not supposed to be the ruler because he had an elder brother, James II, or James II, the eldest son of James I. But the thing was that he died during an accident, and that is how Charles I became the King of England. So even from the very beginning of his rule, there were murmurs about his religious support, etc., which ultimately resulted in this civil war. So this period, apart from the political, the tensions revolving around Charles II, this was also the period of the colonization of North America with the foundation of new colonies, and there were also developments in the case of arts and sciences. So when it comes to Charles I, he actually believed in the divine rights of kingship just like his father. So he believed that no one, including the parliament, has the right to question him, because it's like treason, it's like questioning the God. Okay, it's like questioning the God, it's like treason, so you are not supposed to do that. So he was really irritated by the questions, he was really irritated by the constant disapprovals of the parliament, that he dismissed the parliament and has not called the parliament for 11 years. That was the tyranny that Charles II executed during his rule. So he quarreled with the Parliament of England, which sought to curb his royal prerogative, and he ruled the Parliament for 11 years. That it was from 1629 to 1640. He never called the Parliament, and that was called as the 11 years of tyranny. And there were many Protestants who started to doubt the religious affinity of Charles I, because he was planning to marry. He has got certain religious policies that favored Catholicism, plus he married a Roman Catholic. That actually led a question that the future king will be a Roman Catholic. So many things together came, and it generated the antipathy and mistrust of these reform groups who thought his ways were too Catholic. So you can find that there were many religious conflicts that happened during his time. Charles perceived favoritism towards Catholicism. It alienated the Protestant majority, who naturally supported the parliament, who favored the parliament, and this all ultimately resulted in the Civil War. Civil War was actually a conflict between the Royalists. Royalist means led by Charles I and his supporters, and the parliamentarians, which was led by Cromwell, and it eventually led to his execution in 1649. And he was the first and the only ruler who was executed, or who was beheaded by the public. And towards the end of Caroline age, you can find the decline of masks, because when Puritanism came to prominence, they were not that much in favor of entertainment or in celebration. So such extravagant, what can we say, dramatic forms were not widely appreciated. And even you can find the decline of masks even during the time of Ben Jonson, because of its lecturing, because of the investment that you have to put for a mass to be performed. And coming back to the major literary features, so we will discuss about the Civil War in our next video. But just remember that this was actually the time when Caroline age was the time when Civil War actually happened. So coming to the major literary features, we have poetry, because as I said earlier, it was not a peak time for drama. The Puritans, they were completely against this dramatic drama or any sorts of entertainment. So dramas, theatres, or were banished from 1942 during the Civil War, because when the nation goes in such a turmoil, it's not appropriate to perform or appropriate to enjoy. So dramas were banned. So you cannot find that, you can find a deep decline of this dramatic tradition during the Caroline age. But one thing that came prominent during this time was this poetry. So there was this metaphysical poets at one time, and there are this Cavalier poets who actually followed the ideologies of metaphysical poets, but they were called as this Cavalier poets because they supported Charles the First. So it was more like a derogatory term given to them because of the support to Charles the First. So Cavalier poets were a school of English poets of the 17th century that came from the classes that supported King Charles the First during the English Civil War. And Charles the First, he supported poets who created the art he craved. These poets in turn grouped themselves with the king and his service, thus becoming the Cavalier poets. And speaking about this Cavalier poets, we know that a Cavalier is actually a traditionally a mounted soldier or a knight. So this was actually a term given to them as a derogatory term in order because they were supporters of this Charles the First. And they drew upon the knowledge of classical references, and they also followed the concept of carpe diem, just like this metaphysical poets, that is, seize the day. So celebrate beauty, love, nature, sensuality, drinking, good fellowship, honor, and social life. So carpe diem was one of the major features that you could find in the works of metaphysical and Cavalier poets, and the best known of the Cavalier poets are Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, Thomas Carew, and Sir John Suckling. And speaking about the literary features like prose started to emerge here because dramas were banned, and so the writers like John Milton, they started to write political pamphlets. There were religious pamphlets. So you can find this prose as an emerging genre during this time. So writers like Milton, they began using prose to address political and religious issues, reflecting the ideological divisions of the time. So you can also find a decline of drama. Theatres were increasingly affected by political instability, and in 1642 theatres were officially closed by the Puritans. And speaking about the major writers of this time, most of the writers are either Cavalier poet or a metaphysical poet. For example, Robert Herrick, he was actually a Cavalier poet known for his Hesperides. George Herbert for his work The Temple, Richard Crashaw, Thomas Carew, Sir John Suckling, all are examples. In our LMS platform, we have uploaded in our course, we have uploaded videos on each of these writers, or the students who are self-preparing for NTA NET examination, just dot out these names and go for the works written by them, and also just look at the previous year questions. So that's all about this video. So in this video, we were discussing about the Jacobin and Caroline age. So that is the first two kings of the Stuart dynasty, James the First and Charles the First. You have to know them. You have to know the religious policies, because it was their rule that ultimately resulted in civil war. And Charles the First was the only king who was beheaded in England by the people. So there, the political importance of that age is unmatched. So you have to go through all this while you are preparing for your NTA NET examination. That's all for this video. Thank you.